Today we will be going for a clinical case presentation. Uh, the chief complaints of the patient, a 13-year-old male child, presented to the OPD with pain right knee for 3 months, pain right hip for 2 weeks, and limp for 2 weeks. The patient was apparently healthy before 3 months when he developed a right knee pain following a trivial fall. He consulted a local hospital where X-ray of right knee joint was taken and was prescribed analgesics and anti-inflammatories, and his symptoms were relieved after medications. The patient complains of pain in right hip for 2 weeks, and he sustained a fall while after he sustained a fall while climbing stairs. Pain was acute in onset, localized to the right hip without any proximal or distal radiation. The pain is aggravated with activity and relieved with pain medications and rest. He is able to walk, climb stairs, sit cross-legged and squat. At present, he is advised to strictly non-weight bear. And parents notice a limping since 2 weeks, which was associated with hip joint pain. The limping had been gradually progressing since its onset. There was no history of fever, evening rise of temperature, loss of appetite or weight, and there was no history of night pains. There was no history of similar illness in the past or family history. He is the first child of a non-consanguineous marriage, full-term normal delivery, no history of any hospital or NICU admission since birth, no developmental delay, and he is immunized up to age. Coming to general examination, his height was 153 centimeter, weight was 55 kg, and the BMI was 23.5. Patient is a well-nourished, plump boy, lying comfortably in bed with hip and knee in extension, angle neutral, with light lower limb externally rotated with patella facing outwards. The gait was not assessed as he was advised to strictly non-weight bear. The head-to-toe examination, there was normal secondary sexual characters, and external genitalia was found to be normal, and there was no generalized ligamentous laxity. This is the coming to local examination. About inspection, the patient was examined in lying down position, front, side, and back. The anterior superior iliac spine could not be made out on inspection. There was no fullness of the Scarpa's triangle, and patella was found facing outwards. From the side, there was no exaggerated lumbar lordosis, and greater trochanter was not visible. From the back, the posterior superior iliac spine appeared to be at the same level, and the popliteal fossa appeared to be normal. And the right lower limb appears to be minimally shortened, and there was no visible swelling, scars, pulsations, or sinuses, and there was no muscle wasting. Coming to palpation, there was no local rise of temperature or tenderness. The anterior superior iliac spine was found at the same level. No anterior or posterior hip joint tenderness was found. The femoral pulsations were palpable. No lymphadenopathy, no muscle wasting, and the patella was found facing outwards. There was no exaggerated lumbar lordosis, and the greater trochanter was found to be non-tender. The surfaces were smooth. There was no widening or thickening, and by digital Brand's triangle, the greater trochanter is proximally migrated compared to the opposite limbs. The posterior superior iliac spine at the same level, and there was no masses palpable. Coming to deformity assessment, there was no fixed sagittal or coronal plane deformity, and a fixed external rotation deformity of 20 degree on right lower limb was found. Coming to movements, the flexion of the right hip in both active and passive was found to be 0 to 90 degree, and there was axis deviation present, and the terminal flexion is limited with no pain or spasm. The left hip, the range of movement in flexion was 0 to 110 degree, active and passive. The extension of the hip was done in prone position, and the extension in the right hip was found to be 0 to 20 degree, and left hip was 0 to 10 degree. There was an increased extension of 10 degree on right side. Coming to abduction, it was decreased on right side by 10 degree compared to opposite side, and there was a fixed external rotation deformity of 30 degree with further external rotation of 15 degree on the right side. The left side external rotation was 40 degree and internal rotation was 30 degree. Coming to measurements, there was apparent and true shortening of 0.5 centimeter, and it was supratrochanteric shortening, which was confirmed by Bryan's triangle, and there was no muscle wasting. Special test, Trendelenburg sign, it was not assessed. The vascular sign of Narod was negative. The telescopy test was negative. The sacroiliac stress test, opposite hip, spine, and ipsilateral knee was found to be normal. There was no distal neurovascular deficit or no inguinal lymphadenopathy. Coming to differential diagnosis.
Before you go, Abhidam, just some of your history as well as your physical findings in 2-3 words.
A 13-year-old male boy, he was having a pain for right knee pain for 3 months with pain and limping in the right hip for 2 weeks. He was came to the OPD. He was advised strictly not to bear weight after he came to the OPD. On examination, we found that both the anterior superior iliac spine was at the same level, and the right hip there was axis deviation with a decreased in flexion, and there was a increased extension of 10 degree on the right side with an external rotation deformity, fixed external rotation deformity of 30 degree with further external rotation of 15 degree on the right side. And there was a true shortening was equal to apparent shortening. It was equal to 0.5 centimeter.
Now you may go back to the differential diagnosis.
Coming to differential diagnosis, one is slipped capital femoral epiphysis. Second was leg calvary-Perthes disease. Third, a fractured neck of femur. And fourth was infective synovitis.
Okay, out of this, which one you will prefer to take it as the most probable diagnosis?
Sir, I think the most probable diagnosis would be a slipped capital femoral epiphysis.
What are your points to say that this is a slipped capital femoral epiphysis?
First point regarding the age of the child, it's a adolescent child, 13 years of age. It's a male boy. Then he's having a right knee pain initially. Then after a trivial fall, he developed a pain in the right hip. He is a plump boy comparing to similar age group, and there is a abduction as well as external rotation of the right lower limb with axis deviation present.
So there is selective restriction of mobility. Certain movements are more restricted, certain movements are less restricted.
Yes, sir.
And there is an axis deviation.
Yes, sir.
During flexion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the points in favor being an adolescent boy, plump one, following a trivial trauma, presenting with a knee pain which was probably a referred pain. Subsequently, he developed hip pain on walking, short selective restriction of mobility with external rotation deformity. With the minimal shortening. You measured about 0.5 centimeter or so?
0.5 centimeters.
Okay, those are in favor of you. Also examined the genitalia. If I remember correctly, I asked you to examine it afterwards because you did not examine it in the beginning. It should not be missed by the postgraduates. That should be looked into because most of these patients may have an underlying endocrinopathy or an endocrine abnormality. You may come across an undescended testis or a absent testis or something like that, which may be contributing to your diagnosis. So you should look for it, and that should not be forgotten. Only thing is the boy should be properly cautioned and taken into confidence. The parents should be there so that you can examine it properly and then only proceed. Because that is something which is often missed and you may get into trouble. Why is it not like Calvi-Perthes disease? Late onset.
Sir, even the late onset Perthes disease is from 8 to 13 years, sir. So,
but it produces external rotation deformity. It can present as knee pain.
And there is no axis deviation that is seen in a Perthes disease.
Right, and most children are not that plump and obese. Most children, because Perthes is considered to be a disease of little undernourished children. I do not know whether it is the correct word is malnourished, but underprivileged children are more commonly affected, and you get a better this thing again. You get a selective restriction of mobility in that case. It should not be
Yes.
forgotten.
In Perthes disease, the first movement to be lost will be the flexion, and there will be a fixed flexion deformity. If there is hyperextension, the chances of this disease being Perthes disease is less. And infective synovitis also, it is a far-fetched diagnosis. So we may consider only SUFI and fracture neck of femur, especially not the fracture neck of femur, a physeal injury, which may not be evident, a minor injury, but it is also a far-fetched diagnosis. So actually the only diagnosis could be SUFI.
I was asked this question by one of the postgraduates there, Dr. Asim. Why you can't say that this is not a fracture neck of femur? I said the history is not suggestive of a fracture neck of femur, because he initially had knee pain, which got recovered, and then he was able to move around, and then he developed pain after a fortnight in the hip. If had it been a fracture neck of femur, of course, we have seen people walking with fracture neck of femur, because usually the movements are restricted in a different direction. You don't get an axial deviation, but one has to consider that, because even if you are considering an epiphyseal separation, like slip cap femoral epiphysis, it is in effect a fracture, because it's an epiphyseal injury in that sense. So that has to be considered, but it is not in the common picture. So I would probably agree with the diagnosis of slip cap femoral epiphysis. Sure, you want to add something on that?
Yes, when we read Tashian, actually there is a paragraph discussing how to differentiate between SUFI and a epiphyseal injury, acute epiphyseal injury. The only method by which we can differentiate these two is from the history. So this child will not be having a prodromal symptom. That means a long duration of pain. If the patient is having a fracture neck of femur, it will be an acute injury, a severe injury, may not be a heavyweight patient. So there will be a definite history of trauma. That is our only method by which we can differentiate between SUFI and a epiphyseal injury. Still, we may consider epiphyseal injury, but the second and fourth diagnosis may be far-fetched. I won't consider them.
Those were included for encouraging a discussion, that's all.
So actually, what is SUFI? What is slipping?
The slipping is that it is actually a misnomer. It is actually the proximal metaphysis that is getting displaced laterally, superiorly, and externally outwards. The physis remains inside the acetabulum.
Yes, yes. So that is the reason for this deformity. So this is one of the rare conditions which you will be getting hyperextension.
Yes, sir.
In most hip disease, you will be getting FADER, F-A-D-E-R, that is flexion, adduction, external rotation deformity. So in this style, there will be hyperextension deformity.
Yes,
sir. Do you rule out anything in your investigation before going to your hip examination, investigation? Any associations?
It can be associated with hypothyroidism.
Yes, what are the three associations? Common associations.
Hypothyroidism, hypogonadism, and increased growth hormone secretion and decreased sex hormone secretion with and hypothyroidism.
And one more.
Vitamin D deficiency is also associated with.
So how it is associated, vitamin D deficiency?
Regarding the pathogenesis, there is also a defective mineralization that is occurring in the hypertrophic zone.
We will come to that later. A single word for what is the reason for increased incidence of SUFI in patients with potential rickets. There will be, what will be the secondary effect of hypocalcemia? What will be the secondary effect? There will be secondary hyperparathyroidism.
Parathyroidism.
So through which layer this SUFI is happening?
zone of hypertrophy, sir.
In which zone of which region of the zone of hypertrophy?
In the
Maturation zone.
maturation zone. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, what are the mechanical causes of Sufi? Theories behind Sufi?
The
Why this is
mechanical
happening
theory.
in the adolescent?
Sir, one there is Lacroix. That's the anchoring fibrous tissue that is connecting the
What
physis
is
to
the
the
name of
metaphysis.
that? What is that anchoring tissue called?
Lacroix.
The perichondral ring of
Perichondral
Lacroix.
ring of Lacroix.
Yes. So, what is
that
happening
is-
in the adolescent age group?
That is weak. One.
Second.
Second, there is loss in the proliferative zone. The normal columnar structure is getting disrupted and it is getting clustered. Then there is
You forget about the histology, other mechanical cause. Second mechanical cause. What is happening to the rotation of the hip?
the
Anteversion,
physis gets,
retroversion.
the SCFE has been found to be in, there is an increased incidence of slip capital femoral epiphysis in a retroverted acetabulum as well as
Yes.
head of femurs.
Yes, yes. These are
And
the two
the
prominent
mechanical
mechanical
factors.
theories. There is a third theory. Would you remember that? Third theory.
Mechanical, endocrine, and the physis is more vertical than horizontal, sir. So there is more shearing force that is happening at the physis.
That is a third mechanical cause.
Yes.
Okay. So, what is the association with endocrine disease in general? Is there any? What is the yield if you investigate the patient for endocrine problems in general with patients with Sufi?
So about 20% of the patient is having an endocrine problems and
So only it is low. Though
Yes.
the child will be having a high body mass index, most of them will not be having any endocrine problem. Okay.
Yes.
Even if they are having an endocrine problem, the most common will be hypothyroidism.
Yes.
Hypothyroidism. It is the most commonly found endocrine problem. Okay. So can you move further? What would you like to do for this child? So, what is the importance of looking for weight bearing in a child with Sufi?
Sir, we need to classify whether it is a stable slip capital femoral epiphysis or unstable slip capital femoral epiphysis.
How will you do
If
that?
the child is able to weight bear with or without crutches, it is classified as a stable slip capital epiphysis. And that is having a high implication with the prognosis and the further treatment management.
Can you clarify that? What is the prognosis if there is decreased ability to stand without pain?
There is a high chance of avascular necrosis that can occur in a
Whose
unstable.
theory is this? Whose theory is this?
Loaders.
Loaders. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Then how will you proceed further?
I would like to do a radiological evaluation of the pelvis, like to get an AP view as well as a frog-leg lateral view. This was a X-ray, and the AP view and the frog-leg lateral view. In the AP view, we can see that there was a break in the Shenden's line, as well as the slippage of the physis with the proximal migration of the greater trochanter, measuring the acetabular roof line and biaxial line. Then while drawing the Kleene line, we can see that the Triton sign is positive. Then we measured the Southwick's angle. It came more than 50 degrees in the frog leg lateral view. Then the
Go back to that X. I forgot to show one important finding there. Yeah, what is that in the next picture? Apart from the broken sentence line, etc., there is actually periosteal reaction in the neck of the femur.
Yes,
You can enlarge it a little bit. I can't see it properly.
This is the periosteal reaction.
Femur, actually, there is periosteal reaction. Okay, now you proceed further. That it is actually 3 months actually, isn't it?
Yes, sir. He had right knee pain for 3 months, sir.
Yeah, 3 months. So it is not, it is actually that periostal reaction is suggestive that the symptoms have been present for at least more than 6 weeks, because that is how you get that. You had a bit, that shows better
Yes, sir.
on the right hip. Yes, that shows better. There is periostal reaction when you compare to the opposite side.
Yes,
So
sir.
the epiphysis appears stiff, the basal trochanter appears prominent, and there is periostal reaction, which shows that it has been there for some time. Now you may proceed further.
The pre-work was done and the diagnosis of slip capital femoral epiphysis was made, and we took the patient for surgery, and the surgery, the procedure was an in situ pinning for the slip capital femoral epiphysis. It was done by triangulation method, and 16 mm partially threaded cannulated screw was inserted. 2 screws was inserted. This was a post-op X-ray AP and lateral view. This is a CM picture showing the AP and lateral view. At least 3 threads was passed after the physis, and a partially threaded screw was used. And some amount of the screw was left jutting out from the greater trochanter. Coming to the discussion, the slip capital femoral epiphysis should also always be considered when adolescent patient present with hip pain and difficulty bearing weight. Early detection and treatment is essential to avoid long-term complications such as avascular necrosis and early degenerative joint disease. Examination and radiographic findings of slip capital femoral epiphysis may be subtle, so a thorough evaluation is necessary. It's a misnomer because it is a femoral metaphysis that displaces superiorly and laterally in relation to the epiphysis. It typically occurs in adolescents male, 13 to 15 years old, with 2:1 male to female ratio. There's a physiological loading on a weakened physis results in an increased risk of developing slip capital femoral epiphysis, and obese children are at an increased risk. Etiology. One, regarding the mechanical factors, there is a weakened perichondral ring of Lacroix. The orientation of the physis, there is whatever more vertical orientation having a more chance of slip. Then there is a increase femoral head or acetabular head retroversion. There is an increased incident was found in slip capital femoral epiphysis, and the latest was leptins. Leptins was a hormone secreted by the adipocytes, and it causes the physiological role is it decreases hunger. So even when BMI is low, leptins were found to be elevated in slip capital femoral epiphysis patients, and it's showed that the leptin causes a change in physis similar to those seen in slip capital femoral epiphysis. And what happens is that the hypothalamus becomes unresponsive to leptins. So because the hypothalamus gets unresponsive to leptin, the negative feedback by the ghrelin hormone is not active. Then coming to endocrine factors, hypothyroidism, adipocogenital syndrome, that is increase in growth hormone and decrease in sex hormones, causing a weakening in physis. Then there is when the patient took growth hormone triate and panhypopituitarism, and be seen in Turner's and Klinefelter syndrome. Also, vitamin D deficiency, that is a significant association between high BMI and slip capital femoral epiphysis in India. Now coming to the pathology of slip capital femoral epiphysis, considering the physeal layer, the resting layer was found to be normal, and in the proliferating layer, the chondrocytes, there was a decrease in number of the chondrocytes with degeneration and abnormalities in collagen. The hypertrophic layer, the normal columnar arrangement was disturbed. In the proximal zone of calcification, the calcification was impaired and the slip occurs through the hypertrophic zone. Regarding the histology, the proximal physis is thicker than normal. The chondrocyte in proliferation or hypertrophic was hypertrophy, and there was and degenerating zone, it was arranged in clusters rather than in columns. The chondrocytes were elongated and smaller than normal. The collagen fibrils were thinner and mineralization is scanty in degenerating zones. Then about the clinical features, there can be growing pain, thigh pain or knee pain. Important feature is that the knee pain alone is seen in 15% of the patient. So any child or adolescents complaining of pain knee should have a clinical and radiological evaluation of the hip. And it is seen in obese, increased patients with increased BMI. There can be associated gynecomastia and the Tanner staging should be done. That will be less corresponding to the peer groups. There is selective external rotation deformity with adduction and exaggerated extension can be seen. Then there is restriction of flexion, abduction, and internal rotation. The axis deviation is seen. It's also known as Durham sign. There can be shortening and Tenderlenburg gait. Coming to the investigations, an X-ray, AP lateral and frog-leg lateral view can be taken. A lateral view, if the patient is not able to abduct, so we can do a lateral view. And please, from the X-ray, we can in the pre-slip stage, there can be irregularity of the physis with osteoporosis of the adjacent epiphysis and metaphysis. A Klein's line and 3000 sign can be appreciated as we have seen in our X-ray. In an AP view, the vertical height of the epiphysis appears to be reduced. That may be the only thing that can be appreciated in a pre-slip stage. Then a Steele's metaphyseal blank sign. Here, the crescent shaped area. What is a Steele's metaphyseal blank sign is the increased intensity overlying the metaphysis due to the superimposition of the slipped physis. Then sham sign. Sham sign, in the normal adolescent hip, the intra-articular portion of the metaphysis, especially the inframedial region, that overlaps with the posterior acetabular wall, and we will get a triangular area. So, in SCFE, because of the migration of the proximal physis, there is loss of this dense triangle C. That's a sham sign. UST, the primary role is in unstable hip. Regarding CT, to document whether there is any femoral head retroversion or the measure head shaft angle or the confirm whether the physis has closed or not. The role of MRI is the MRI is more sensitive, especially it is able to detect imminent slip and assess the vascularity of the femoral head. Now, coming to the classification of slip capital femoral epiphysis, the temporal classification, it is basically based on the natural history of the disease, that is the pre-slip, that there is only a widening and irregularity of the physis seen. Second is the acute slip. It is characterized by the duration of the symptoms, that is less than 3 weeks. Chronic slip, it is more than 3 weeks. Acute on chronic slip, the duration is more than 3 weeks, and the patient may be having a recent history of a trivial trauma and there is an exaggerated pain. Another classification is the Lorenz classification, that's based on the physeal stability and the predictability to developing osteonecrosis. That is, it is divided into two, that is unstable slip capital femoral epiphysis and stable slip capital femoral epiphysis. Unstable based on whether the patient is able to bear weight with if he is able to bear weight with or without crutches, it is termed as a stable slip capital femoral epiphysis, and if he is unable to do so, it is termed as unstable slip capital femoral epiphysis. And in an unstable slip capital epiphysis, there is a high degree of vascular necrosis, that is up to 50%. And the stable slip capital femoral epiphysis is having a very good prognosis as well as a very low rate of AVN. Now, based on the Southwick angle, the severity of the slip can be assessed, and it can be a mild, moderate, or severe. The mild when the head shaft angle is less than 30 degree, and moderate if it is 30 to 50 degree, and severe it is more than 50 degree. Coming to the treatment, there is no rolling conservative treatment. So any child with open physis needs to be surgically treated. Without stabilization, why the need for surgical treatment is that because without stabilization, the progression of the slip is inevitable, and the untreated slip capital femoral epiphysis has a high chance of osteoarthritis. The aim of treatment is one, to get a pain relief, then maintain a normal epiphyseal-femoral neck relationship, then prevent the further progression of the slip and accelerate epiphysiodesis and prevent the complications of slip capital femoral epiphysis. Now, coming to the unstable slip, the treatment options are in situ pinning, close reduction and pinning, open reduction and capital realignment by GANs, and open reduction by PASH technique. In situ pinning, the method is by triangulation method. In the AP view, K-wire is placed, and in the middle of the neck shaft and also in the lateral view, and we triangulate and the entry point is assessed. Then the rationale is after in situ pinning, the bone resorption occurs in the anterolateral area, while the bone deposition occurs posteromedially. So there will be a better remodeling in the head shaft angle. Multiple smooth pins, multiple threaded pins, multiple cannulated screws, or a single cannulated screw has been used. And now the prescribed mode is the single cannulated screw, especially a fully threaded cannulated screw that's a 32 mm is better than a 16 mm, because with the 32 mm cannulated screw, the removal of the fully threaded screw is comparatively easy. And the position at the dead center of the AP and lateral view, that is perpendicular to the physis, and at least three threads has to cross the physis. And the base of the screw is deliberately left long, so that if at all there is a physeal growth occurs, that can compensate. And usually one screw is advised, and a second screw can be put in unstable and acute slip. The disadvantages of in situ pinning are femoroacetabular impingement, especially in slips more than 35 degree, can be chondrolysis and implant failure. Coming to open reduction, it is done in severe and moderate slip. A safe surgical dislocation of the gans is done, and general reduction of the hip and pinning is done, and it gives it preserves the vascularity. By pass technique, we do an open reduction and a smooth K-wire fixation, and it's done for unstable slip capital femoral epiphysis, and here the reduction is achieved by flexion, abduction, and internal rotation. And there is a very less chance of or 4.7% of AVN. Coming to the close reduction technique, it is also known as the Leadbetter loader Schrader technique. Here, the Leadbetter method for reduction is used, and the technique is by flexion, abduction, and internal rotation. And the rate of AVN is low, like 14%, and aggressive reduction in and this is not advisable when the slip angle is less than 35 degree, and also in a stable slip, because there is a high chance of AVN. So summarizing mild slip and moderate slip. Mild slip, the treatment options are in situ fixation. No manual reduction should be done. 1 or 2 screws can be placed, and primary or secondary osteochondroplasty can be done to avoid the femoroacetabular impingement in the future. Coming to the moderate slip, we can do an open reduction and capital stabilization by safe surgical dislocation, or by pass technique, and a close reduction and fixation can also be attempted. In the case of a stable slip capital femoral epiphysis, if it is mild and in situ fixation with primary or secondary osteochondroplasty, if it is a moderate and severe slip, safe surgical dislocation, capital realignment by modified Dunn osteotomy has to be done, and an in situ fixation and primary or secondary osteochondroplasty or a proximal femoral osteotomy can be done. The primary osteotomy can be a done subcapital osteotomy. It is not done now because of a very high risk of avascular necrosis. The other osteotomy is the osteotomy through the base of the neck. It is known as Kramer and Bremada osteotomy, and most commonly done is the intertrochanteric osteotomy of Southwick. Now, regarding the prophylactic pinning to do on the opposite side or not. So, the bilateral involvement is seen in 20 to 80, and asymptomatic slipping on the contralateral side is about 40%. So, routine prophylactic pinning is not recommended. The indication for a prophylactic pinning was one, when the age is less than 10 years, or when the triraded, the slipping occurs even when the triraded cartilage is open, or if it is associated with any endocrinopathies. So, because when there is an endocrinopathy, there is a very high chance of a contralateral slipping and on non-compliant patient. The complications of treatment include: 1, the avascular necrosis, that's the most common complication. Second is the chondrolysis. Then a maldonated slip, which is more common compared to the femoroacetabular impingement. Then implant failure and slip progression. There can be a contralateral slip, a late os. They can have trouble removing the implants. Brief about the chondrolysis. It's a disease of unknown etiology, characterized clinically by progressive pain and limitation of the hip joint movements. And it is Pathologically, there is acute cartilage necrosis, and radiologically, more than 50% reduction in joint space, or in considering the bilateral cases, less than 3 mm joint space. And it can lead to stiffness and ankylosis, especially fibrous ankylosis, and persistent pin penetration into joint surface or untreated. What causes the chondrolysis is persistent penetration into the joint surface, or if it is an untreated slip capital femoral epiphysis, or in the earlier days when due to spica cast immobilization. And it can be prevented by careful pin placement. The treatment of chondrolysis it can be a non-surgical treatment as well as a surgical treatment. Non-surgical treatment, patient can be.
You can move ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Dominic, do you want to ask him any questions? Please.
I didn't fully attend the presentation, but as far as I heard, it was a beautiful presentation. And the method of measuring the angle in the X-ray was beautiful. They have demonstrated very beautifully. And the surgery you did in situ pinning, and what was the procedure done?
Yes, sir. In situ pinning, sir.
In situ pinning. So it's a mild type.
Actually, the slip angle was moderate, sir. It was between 30 to 50, sir.
So you didn't, but you didn't attempt.
But it was a stable slip, so in situ pinning was done, sir.
But in your discussion, you are talking about the even moderate cases. You have to do a reduction.
Sir, when a stable slip is there, close reduction is not attempted because there is a high chance of vascular necrosis.
Stable one. This is a stable one. Yeah, that is why you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And now, but I had a feeling that earlier the dictum is to now the dictum is to do all cases intervention, surgical intervention. Was
Yes,
that
sir.
the concept earlier?
No, sir. Initially, hip spica class was advised, sir. But because the incidence of chondrolysis was more, now
Yeah. I know.
conserve.
Now the concept is right. But I was just wondering, what was the concept earlier? It was not that aggressive, it seems.
What is the clinical type of this one? Is it a chronic slip, acute slip?
Sir, it's an acute on chronic slip, sir.
It's an acute and chronic slip. So in fact, acute and chronic slip, there is a role for a gentle reduction.
Yes, sir.
You need not go for in situ pinning. Acute slip, you reduce and pin it.
Okay, sir.
Acute and chronic also, you can do a gentle reduction. In fact, that has happened, I think, when you have done it. May not be
Yes, in the positioning in the fracture table.
that itself has caused a gentle reduction. That is advisable, so that you can improve the position, and screw placement is easier. If the epiphysis is remaining away from the neck, the screw will offshoot into the joint actually.
Okay.
If you see the check X-ray, the head epiphysis has come into almost good position.
Yes, sir.
Not only that, the screw is actually started from the anterior aspect of the femur.
Otherwise, it will go out definitely.
It is not from the lateral side. It is started from the anterior side to get back to the epiphyseal field. That you can see that in the X-ray. You show that CM picture, please. Yeah, you can see that it is not on the lateral cortex.
No, exactly.
It's actually on the anterior cortex, grazing the anterior cortex. That's how you get into this thing. Probably that whatever that showed in the pre-reduction, as you rightly said, it has gone into a little more improved position. But my own advice, a word of caution is, never try to manipulate it. You may do a gentle placement, it may come back if you are lucky and the patient is lucky. Whatever you do by manipulation is likely to get into bigger trouble.
Manipulation is meant for acute slips only.
Sir, Wilson, sir.
Manipulation is advisable only for acute slips.
Yeah, right.
Acute and chronic, you can do a gentle manipulation. In fact, when you fix it in the table itself, it gets reduced to some extent. Purposeful reduction is deleterious because it is an invitation for IVA.
Yeah, it has happened to me when I was actually placing the patient on the table. I felt that it has been reduced.
Oh,
I think I was assisted by Sherry at that point. And Sherry said, sir, something hurt. Right. I said, we'll see the future. And that was actually promptly reduced. It didn't do anything actually. It got reduced, I must say.
So that also is a possibility. Right? So it will not produce. It will produce by itself.
Yeah, I don't think you need to do violent manipulations. You gently constant abduction, and then probably yes. You can, if you are trying to manipulate, probably not more than 2 manipulation must be done. Because otherwise it will end up in disaster. Left alone, it will heal better in a myelinated position without an osteoarthritis for another 50 years.
How common is chondrolysis and the avascular necrosis, sir, in Wilson's experience? Is it very frequent? Or
chondrolysis I have seen.
Eh?
Chondrolysis I have seen. In slip capillary incidence is high. Because sometimes the skin gets penetrated. Even in the CM, it may appear it is inside. But surprisingly, when you take a true lateral subsequently, the pin may be slightly outside. The one I had actually pin a little outside. It developed within a short span of 3 or 4 years.
Then will that symptoms persist or recover by itself, chondrolysis?
They get pain, limitation of movement and pain.
It will be persisting or not?
It will be progressive.
And what about avascular necrosis? Is it
Avian I have seen, but it is not as catastrophic as the classical avian. Radiologically it is there, but the patient has not much problem. The one I have seen. Another thing, if you try to remove the screws, it is almost impossible. I have seen one being left. I myself have left one. Possibly, if you put a fully threaded 32 mm, it may be possible, but otherwise it will never come back. Because it gets complete, it is a child, so there is a lot of growth. Removal is extremely difficult. So if you have any intention to remove, a 32 mm fully threaded strip. Because the unthreaded part gets completely cortical bone. So it will not cut through. Otherwise, you have to put what they say is a reverse cutting.
Reverse cutting.
So if you honestly feel that this boy is likely to develop a chondroarthritic involvement, there is a place for an MRI. I also believe that if the patient comes with an untreated, neglected slip, then it is better to wait till skeletal maturity and do a subtrochanteric corrective osteotomy. This is my feeling, because today many people won't accept that, but that is something which has to be kept in mind. That's all. Okay, if there is nothing more, then we will call it a day.